Welcome back to Beyond the Pump, where we talk about the business of fitness and nutrition. Today, we are going to have one of the shortest podcast episodes, potentially in the history of podcasting in general. And we have something very juicy, yet very potent and impactful. Because once you do this thing, there is no going back. You are obligated to continue to do this one coaching business development guru behavior for the rest of your life. And in fact, Steve, he's brought something for us here. So Steve, would you like to share with the group and our listeners what exactly they need to do to stay at the top of the game and to reinvent it consistently to get people interested? Like how do people stay excellent?
The thing really comes down to, if you don't know what you're doing and you're tired of failing at the thing, go out and do a new thing. Tell the world that you changed the game because it was time and you're the one inventing the rules and making it better for them, not for your own financial benefit, not because you couldn't figure out your old problem and you couldn't bring yourself to actually learn enough about it. And then just go out and sell that as the new best way to solve the old problem that you couldn't figure out how to solve it to begin with. So, hey, I'm a business coach for nutrition coaches, but I suck at business coaching. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to sell you cars, because cars are great for business coaches that are trying to help nutrition coaches, because it helps you drive and gets you to places. And that's just what you're going to have to do. And then when that doesn't work, the next thing you're going to do is start telling everybody that GLP-1s are for everybody. And the only ones making fun of GLP-1s are the people that are not on GLP-1s, or maybe on GLP-1s. I'll let you decide.
What the fuck are we talking about with cars?
I was trying to go wild.
But, obviously, tongue in cheek aside, one of the most simple things that you can do, and this is actually accurate, is the more clearly you can set expectations, the faster you will build trust. The faster you build trust, the bigger the asks, and the more likely that your client is to do the things that you ask of them. You can build complexity really quickly when you do this one thing very simply, and that is communication. So this spans a lot of different segments of a business, from a coach to a client, from a business owner to the rest of the team, from a business owner to the vendors, from the vendor manager to the team. This thing is literally the vehicle for how anything gets done, especially when it starts to extend beyond just someone building something themselves that is self-contained and considered an internal artifact or document. So Steve, obviously with you having a wide breadth and depth of communication, I think that you do one of the best jobs of, scheduling feedback loops and kind of getting all that stuff situated. And obviously your experience with having all those different gyms and having those structures built. I think that our listeners would really benefit from exploring some of those communication best practices. So as they're either building themselves, their practices, or their businesses and their partner lists, what should they be thinking about?
I'm going to say the single biggest thing to focus on right now is ensuring nobody can ever say they didn't know, which is almost always a byproduct of your fear of telling somebody something that they need to hear. Mm-hmm. So a good example, you hire an employee, or you have a client, or you have a friend, frankly, whatever the relationship is, and you build some sort of feeling, and 90% of the time it's negative, towards something that they've done, right? Hey, I have an employee, I have a client, they're not doing their job, whatever the case may be. And eventually you've had enough and you walk up to them, you call them, whatever it is, and they're very surprised by whatever it is that comes out of your mouth. The problem that happens is, for a period of time, you negotiate back and forth. Should I? Oh, I didn't do this thing. I didn't set expectations. I didn't train them. Did I give them the tools that they needed to win? Did I? But yet you still don't take action on solving that problem. You would rather just avoid it because you didn't do your job until you can't handle it anymore. And then you kind of throw it out there and they're caught off guard. The thing I care about most is ensuring the people around me, when I deliver them feedback, are not overtly surprised. And on top of that, we have relationship currency in the such that I'm giving you feedback. You trust it's my perception on how you can be better, not me just telling you suck. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I used to be terrible at this. When I first opened my businesses and everything, I was bad. I would avoid it. I don't want to have confrontation. I got to be in the same building with you all day. All these things. But I would just say, how can you ensure that person is not surprised and you don't look like a jerk when you finally lose your shit and tell them whatever it is that you want to tell them?
Mm-hmm.
Put those things in place, those training moments, those touch bases, those conversations, so that way they know and they're generally speaking well aware.
To add a little bit of a different psychological perspective to that, I think that when it comes to communication and giving that feedback, to your point, people need that relational currency because no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And one of the things that happens when we start giving people unsolicited feedback is oftentimes it shifts from a collaborative, hey, how do we win this together type of experience. And then it shifts into like an evaluation. And frankly, like, let's be honest, no one really likes to be scrutinized or evaluated as how far are you from where you should be. That's one of the quickest ways to shut down conversation and to really have people get stuck in this behavioral loop of repeating the same behavior, getting the same outcome. And it's a really anxiety producing type of environment. And so the impact of that is usually the first time you offer someone something and they're not ready for it, or whatever, is that most people in general, even preceding that, will start to engage in something called impression management, where they want you to think highly of them and they want you to have good opinion of them, which is why it's important that you demonstrate how much you care about them, because it shows that you validate them as a human. And if you don't do that, again, they're going to engage in behaviors, because inherently people want to be liked, even if they say they don't. They'll do things subconsciously to try to get you to like them. And so what this really looks like on an organizational level is something that's really interesting, from a consulting client recently, in that we see most of it's called eyewash. I believe I heard that term from, credit him where it's due, Mike Esposito, one of the original guys that managed at Lifetime for a minute there. But he called it eyewash. And he said, in the dugout, you just look like you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. You're not really doing anything productive. You just want, when people are looking at you, to seem like you're busy. In the military, no one would ever stop you if you were walking somewhere fast with a clipboard, right? You're not, whether you're actually doing anything productive or not, doesn't matter. But it does give you the impression of being busy. And people think that busyness is associated with being important or being productive or being valuable. And frankly, that's just not the case. And in fact, in my experience, the more busy people are, usually it's just a mismanaged allocation of resources. We really break this down. Like, if you don't want people to engage in impression management, because impression management will kill any meaningful progress, you have to be able to give people the freedom to fail and to make failing a safe endeavor, especially if you're in a smaller organization and you are actually caring about innovation, which, to Steve's prop here of changing the game, we found that innovation, when we started to try to actually endeavor to change things, it would be met with like, hey, we don't have the budget for that, or hey, we got to fire someone to make money for that. Like, there's always a weird thing whenever we would change the game, and changing the game, frankly, is an expensive endeavor that some people aren't equipped to stomach, and they suck at planning strategically. I'm not saying that, obviously, the person we're referring to here, but most people, by the time they give their first piece of feedback to a team member that's excited and they bring, hey, here's my progress, or that person's like, oh, I didn't do a great job, I don't know how to navigate this, and they're like, let me hide it. Immediate red flag for the entire organization. And imagine building upon that kind of foundation where people are afraid to say, hey, here's the failure point. We all need to figure this out, or I need some assets or resources to learn how to be better about failing forward. That's really going to, at some point, potentially around the $10 to $20 million mark, really bite you in the butt, just from the couple of instances where I've seen that. And we've seen really scrappy smaller organizations that are under the kind of like the $10 million budget or revenue, per year. Like, they scrap it out because they don't necessarily have to finalize those things, because their point and scale, the magnitude of impact isn't large enough for that to really start showing up as a systemic organizational issue. So, impression management, you got to make people feel safe. Communication is the best way to do that. So, I mean, back to you, Steve, like in that case, how do you make people feel that the feedback that you're saying isn't about them personally, but rather about the outcome or the project, or something that's not centralized to who they are as an individual and their value as a person?
I think it really just comes back to that relationship currency side of things, of, hey, for the first period of time that we're in this relationship together, I'm going to be super direct and quick around like feedback around how we can improve the thing. But I'm also going to call myself out on my own thing where I could have been better and just own those pieces out of the gates of like, this is us growing as two humans who are communicating and learning to interact or engage with each other. It doesn't mean I make shit up about myself, but I'm human. I make plenty of mistakes on a minute by minute basis. So it's just one of those moments where like, oh yeah, hey, cool. Like, let's just talk through this quick and like go on. And then it also, once we talk through it, it never gets mentioned again. Like this is not something we harp on. It's not emotional. It's literally, oh, hey, here's the thing. Hey, cool. Let's move on. And then we don't rehash it unless, sure, like you continue making the same mistake. Then obviously we got to talk about that thing. But from that perspective, like we talk about the thing. Here's why I care about it. So it's not just, hey, Andrew, I don't like the fact that you don't clean your cups. It's, hey, Andrew, I feel like the things that you drink might taste better if you actually use a fresh cup for each one of those. I just want to make sure you're enjoying everything that you're consuming. It's two very different scenarios right there on that side of things. And then that's also one of those things like, oh, okay. I positioned it as, hey, I'm just saying you should probably do this because you might enjoy it more, rather than like, I care about you changing this because it's something that I care about, rather than something that you should do just because of whatever. Right. So that would be that positioning. Again, why do I care? What's the foundational component of why this matters? And oh, by the way, like call me out on my shit, or I'll call myself out on my shit as well, because hey, we both need that both ways.
Inside of that like environment where that's really essential to move forward, I think it's really important that people come into the equation with a shared vision or a shared like collaborative need. Because you start getting in there, and this is where unsolicited advice for people that have no idea about the context of the situation is oftentimes perceived as abrasive. You're like, what the fuck are you talking about? Shut your mouth. You don't know anything about it. Talk to a teenager. They do that shit all the time. Right. And, it's really important when you come to the table with a complaint, is that you have a reason why that complaint is valid. Like, hey, listen, we're trying to get this thing done. We're on the same team here. And when we create a common shared outcome that we both are responsible for in some form or fashion, it really does change the tonality of it and make it a productive, constructive, like, hey, listen, this is my perspective. I don't have the entire equation. What's your perspective? Okay, cool. How do we bridge that? So that way now, again, it just, in my experience, when you have that, like, hey, I have some skin in the game as well in this. This is how I'm responsible for that. Like, what do you have coming to the table? And let's really take a second to make sure that, we're on the up and up, and naturally things will start to converge, and we just need to line these things up a little bit. So that's been something that's been really helpful for me to kind of diffuse people that are really upset in the past, and help them feel significant and valued in that side, inside of that equation. But anything else that you have communication wise to help people be able to meaningfully integrate feedback as we wrap up the episode, Steve?
I just like to look at it as, how do I do everything to avoid that person being surprised when I give them feedback? And make sure you communicate, make sure you deliver feedback in a constructive manner. Make sure you are open yourself to feedback, as well as kind of talking about yourself and how you can be better during sessions too. And it needs to come in a situation where you have a relationship that's built on trust, to know like, hey, this person is saying it for our benefit, not just to turn around and tell me that whatever, they have some feeling about something that's not overly relevant to something that both of us are bought into. And also, like, the last piece is, be consistent. Don't be like an emotional basket case one time giving feedback and all these components, and the next time trying to act all calm, and then the third time showing up super passive aggressive and all these components. Like, just show up as you and give feedback directly, but also understand they're a human. And I'm not saying don't be direct or like be too soft around it, but make sure you understand how you would want somebody to tell you, like, hey, I need you to be better and do this thing, so that way it can help us win. Right.
Yeah.
But those would be the summation of the principles here.
Yeah. I think, for me, for them to manage the cognitive load of that feedback, it really does come down to asking them how they'd like to receive it. Sometimes people, do prefer like a different kind of communication style. Like, hey, can you help me I'm one of those people. right? If something comes across my desk and they're like, hey, I didn't like this, I'm like, can you give me an example of what that means, or when that happened, or like, so it's not some conceptual thing. If you start spanking your dog's butt because it, just randomly pees on the ground 5 days after the fact, and you can't, it's really hard to connect the dots. So that's where I'm saying, like, the feedback and the cognitive loading of how you mention that stuff. Again, in the coaching psychology course, we talk about this stuff. So definitely want to make sure that you guys are taking advantage of that. We have a previous episode where we gave you a code. If you listen to that, comment the code, will give you access for the next 30 days. So some expiration on that. But yeah, Steve, you want to close us out?
Yeah, that was it. We appreciate you guys hopping on, listening into Beyond the Pump, where we break down the business of fitness and nutrition. Definitely in today's world, communication is a key thing. So rewatch this one here and send it to somebody who needs some help. Subscribe to the channel, like the episode, and throw us a comment on what you want us to break down next. And until next time, we'll chat with you later.
Peace.